There's no evidence whatsoever, no record of a transfer of this symbol being used for the transfer of power. We don't know anything about all this because there's no evidence. Somebody must leave a record. It sounds also far-fetched. It sounds very strange, and therefore it looks like a piece of fiction that has been cooked up by the present government. Nehru could not have accepted it symbolically. It's the wrong thing to accept in any sense. Secondly, it doesn't make constitutional sense. So if this is a symbol of royal power, it would be abhorrent to Nehru. No question of touching it. How can, in a modern democracy and a republic like the Indian, how can you assume royal symbols of power and place it in the center of democracy in Parliament? Will we have a crown next?
On May 28th, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the new Parliament building. During the inauguration, Prime Minister Modi will keep the golden sceptre or a Sengol at the Speaker's chair. The significance of the Sengol is that the government of India claims that it was used to mark the transfer of powers from the British to India on the eve of independence. But its historical significance was lost to many because the Sengol was kept at a museum in Allahabad for 75 years. Joining me today to explain all about the Sengol and its history, its lost history, is Madhavan Palat, who is the editor of the selected works of Jawaharlal Nehru. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. I want to begin by asking you, is there any official record of the Sengol being used as a symbol to mark the transfer of power from the British to India? Because the Union government has claimed that Lord Mountbatten asked Nehru what ceremony or symbolic action should mark the transfer of powers, and that Nehru in turn asked Rajaji, who came up with the Sengol. So my second part of this question is there any documentary evidence to show that Nehru actually sought Rajaji's advice on such a symbol?
Well, to deal with the first question, there's no evidence whatsoever, no record of a transfer of this symbol being used for the transfer of power. If there was any such symbol used, we would have had it in the official record in many different ways. We would have had umpteen photographs. After all, everything was documented for such an occasion. You would have seen Mountbatten handing it over to Nehru. After all, we see Mountbatten swearing at Nehru. So what about this particular event? There's not at all anywhere anything to be found. None of the biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, and so on record anything of the kind. However much you search, you will never find anything. And certainly we haven't seen any such photographs. So there doesn't seem to be any record whatsoever. So where it has come from, we don't know. It doesn't seem to have occurred in any sense of the term. Now, the second part is whether Lord Mountbatten actually asked Nehru, what are you going to do ceremonially, as it were, some symbolic gesture. Well, we don't know if Mountbatten even asked Nehru. Or it might have been an off-the-cuff question. Are you doing anything special, sort of stuff. And we do not know if Nehru asked Rajaji. Again, there might have been some informal talk about something. And they might have left it at that. We don't know anything about all this because there's no evidence. Somebody must leave a record. And then Rajaji going hunting around in Tamil Nadu looking for a staff and then finding it in this particular fashion and so on. It sounds also far-fetched. It sounds very strange. And therefore it looks like a piece of fiction that has been cooked up by the present government.
You had said at an interview that, going by whatever you have researched on Nehru and all of the work that you have read about him, Nehru would never have accepted even a symbolic gesture as such. Why do you say that?
You see, when Mountbatten swears at Nehru, that's a legal act signifying the formal transfer of power. That is required because it is by the Indian Independence Act that India becomes independent, and there has to be an assumption of power legally. All that is required. But the symbolic ones, like this, Nehru would hardly take it from Mountbatten. The reason is it looks as if he is receiving a gift from the British. It is just the wrong sort of symbol that you could possibly have. A sceptre is a symbol of royal power. It is a sceptre of sovereignty. And for Nehru to receive it from Mountbatten is wrong in every way. First of all, it reduces the dignity of Indian independence by receiving a gift. Secondly, it's constitutionally nonsense because it is a symbol of sovereignty. The sovereign at that time was George VI in 1947. And he remained the sovereign, rather, he remained the emperor until 22nd June 1948. That's when he gave up the title. And only on 26 January 1950 did he cease to be the monarch. And India became fully sovereign only then. So, what is the meaning of handing over a sceptre? George VI would have had to have handed it, taken it from his left hand and given it into his right hand, or the other way around. Or Mountbatten would have had to do it as a representative of the king. But the one person it cannot go to is Nehru. He's the Prime Minister. And if finally it is to be given to a head of state as sovereign on January 26th, it would have been Rajendra Prasad who should have got it, not Nehru. So Nehru could not have accepted it symbolically. It's a wrong thing to accept in any sense. Secondly, it doesn't make constitutional sense.
So we know that, well, at least officially on record, we know that Mountbatten did not hand over the Sengol to Nehru. But the government has claimed that the Sengol was handed over by the Adheenam. And as evidence, they've provided a number of news reports from the Hindustan Times, the Time magazine at the time, and these were all reports from 1947. And in fact, one particular report even says that this is a practice of ancient kings to receive a symbol of power and authority from Hindu holy men. So, what do you have to say about this evidence provided by the government of India?
Well, what is likely to have happened is, because we have a photo, we see that Adheenam or somebody representing him giving Nehru the staff. And Nehru seems to be wearing some sort of a red shawl over his shoulders. I've seen that photograph. Now, what it is most likely is, it was a gift to Nehru. Lots of well-wishers would give gifts. And people in Nehru's position would accept gifts routinely. And the gifts are then placed in the store in some way, wherever the store is. And you've seen them in the various, in the Prime Minister's house and so on. Nehru would not have dreamt of receiving it as a symbol of power from this man. Who on earth is this man to give it to him as a symbol of power? He doesn't represent anything to give it to the Prime Minister. He's a head of a mutt, nothing else. And Nehru would have certainly refused to accept any such symbol from anybody. Any citizen of the country can come along and give him a gift, certainly, and saying, here on Indian independence, I would like to mark this occasion by giving you this. Fair enough, he would accept it. But to claim that it is a symbol of sovereignty and of power, no, that can come only from a source of power, the source of authority. And that Adheenam is not a source of authority for the whole country. So Nehru cannot receive it from him.
So the government has also made it seem like this is an ancient tradition stemming from Chola times, right? From Chola dynasty, and that is where this Sengol has, and it was created by Rajaji, by a jeweler in Madras. You have also said that even if Nehru knew that this was a symbol of a royal symbol, like a royal tradition, he would have spurned it. Again, can you give me your arguments as to why you believe so?
Well, if it's a royal symbol, all the more reason. Nehru would have nothing to do with royalty. He is not becoming a king. He is not assuming power with anything like the legitimacy and the claims of a king. He repudiated all such pretensions. India was going to be had become a democracy, and it was going to become a republic. The one thing it would not have to do, anything to do with, is monarchy, kings, royal power, and all the rest. So if there's a symbol of royal power, it would be abhorrent to Nehru. No question of touching it in that sense. Of course, it might have been a symbol of royal power in Chola times. And somebody might have thought up that bright idea, why not hand it to Nehru, and so on. Well, that's independent. Nehru himself would not have accepted it in that sense, under any circumstances.
Many have also pointed out that the Sengol has religious significance, considering the fact that it was handed over by the Adheenam, and that therefore they have criticized Nehru for even accepting the Sengol at the time, saying that given the values he espoused of secularism and he being an atheist himself should not have accepted the Sengol. How do you react to this criticism now?
You see, one can always be purist about these things and say you must never touch anything religious. And if Nehru already was a person who refused to have anything to do with anything that seemed religious or had a religious legitimacy about the act. Now, of course, a certain range of actions would have something religious about it at some time or the other. Somebody might chant something. Somebody might recite a shloka. These things happen. And to pull up Nehru on every and any such occasion would be extreme. In this country, it's almost impossible to avoid it. The point is, Nehru avoided it on most occasions, and completely so. Anything that represented the religion for the state, he repudiated completely. That's why he opposed Rajendra Prasad going to Somnath for the opening of the temple. All that he did. But that doesn't mean he refused to meet Swamis and so on. He met them. And he would give them lectures. He would be giving the lectures. They would not be giving him lectures. And he would tell them about what India is. He's not listening to religious discourses from them. He'd be giving his story to them. And there are a number of accounts of his meeting Swamis and people like that. They're citizens of the country. Anyone can meet him. And he made it a point to meet as many people as much as possible. Now, on this occasion, this man came and gave it. God knows what he said. We do not know. Did he say that this is a symbol of royal power? No, no. I would doubt if he would have dared to say it. And whether Nehru would have accepted it in such a sense. But in a moment, somebody might say something when you have not expected it. And you leave it at that. That's all.
My final question is, why do you believe that the BJP government has raised the issue of the Sengol today? They've made it seem that the Congress and Nehru chose to bury its historical significance for 75 years, and that now the BJP government, with the new parliament building, is choosing to emphasize or highlight it once more. So why do you believe it's been raised now?
I don't think the Congress and Nehru were burying its significance. It was just a gift, which was then placed in the appropriate place, in a museum. And then everybody forgot about it. That's all. There are hundreds of gifts lying around in the Murti house and elsewhere. People in such positions always receive gifts. And then the others have the great problem of making museums out of them and how to display them and all the rest. Some of it is rubbish and some of it is interesting and some of it is exquisite. Now, in this case, I don't know how it got to the Allahabad Museum. Nobody seems to know. And this government, according to the news reports, took several months searching for it to find it. It is certainly not forgotten as a historic object. It is just another gift, that's all. And it went the way of all gifts. It is not thrown away. It was just placed in a museum. That's what happens to all the gifts. Now, the present government is clearly using it, I think, as far as I can see, to get votes in Madras, in Tamil Nadu. Plain and simple. The Cholas are the most important Tamil dynasty. It is a matter of great pride in Tamil Nadu. So to bring up an item of such Chola significance and place it so prominently in Parliament in Delhi and so on is a crass attempt, as far as I can see, to get some votes. I do not know if anybody will be impressed by that and whether they will vote for that very reason. But clearly there's no other reason. How can, in a modern democracy and a republic like the Indian, how can you assume royal symbols of power and place it in the center of democracy in Parliament? Will we have a crown next from somewhere? And other such royal symbols? No, all this doesn't make sense. It is plainly an electoral gambit.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Well, we'll have to wait and see in 2024 whether BJP's move will pay any dividend in Tamil Nadu. They have the zero seats in Tamil Nadu as far as the Lok Sabha is concerned. So we'll have to wait and see in 2024. But thank you so much for putting all of this into perspective for us. Thanks again. And